Okay, morning folks. Matt Flanagan here from BlueHub, looking to run this Better Planning for Your Cloud Conversion project. Just before we start, just to check everyone can hear me okay, if you could just put in the question box, which should be like a hand raised type thing, on your view there. If you could just put in what you drink at the moment, a cup of coffee, cup of tea, what have you had this morning, just so I can see some people can actually hear. So a few coffees there straight away. People just put okay, that's absolutely fine, brilliant. Right, coffees, teas, waters, perfect. I've got my coffee ready as well. Right, okay, great. We're going to get into this and run through this webinar workshop. I will have some time at the end to answer some questions, but I'm going to flow through it and get straight into it. Monday morning, thanks for joining. Okay, so overview, look at some of the common issues that we're seeing with firms and their stagnation of conversion of clients to cloud. We're going to look at the progress in your firm and how to maybe measure and view that. We're going to look at your current scenarios, so things that you should be contemplating and reviewing currently. Have you got any current targets in place and what that might look like? Example current scenario calculations. So once we know this data and feeding off the data we already have, we can start to understand what we're trying to do. Some example planning steps. This is a frequent question. Well, that's great. I know I need to plan this, but what do you mean? So we're going to give you some practical steps. And then some example templates and outputs, how we can help, and some tips and takeaways. So I'm going to get straight into it really. So common issues with firms, the first one we really have is vision, and the accountancy profession is one of those professions which love to strategize about strategy, and I've been and seen firms 12 months after they've started their project and their vision is still not completed. It's a huge, massive document normally. No one ever gets around to fully reading it. It's out of date, as these documents always are, because the minute you write a vision in this fast-turning world, we are expecting that it's going to be out of date, so you need to have a review process. So we talk about with firms making sure you get something written down. It's going to be an evolving document and needs to be re-reviewed regular, at least 2-3 times a year, to ensure that the vision is always being updated. It's a really important document, and I think it's essential in terms of that vision for internal and external communications, so you know where you're going. Okay, the next one we have is agreement levels. So when I've been working and talking with firms, I'll go and speak to the partner or senior management, and they'll say, yeah, we've agreed that we've signed up to this deal with a certain cloud accounting vendor, and we're trying to get to a point of we're going to have done this in the next 18 months. So let's say we're going to do 300 clients in the next 18 months. That might be what you've agreed to. When I go and speak to the actual people who need to make this happen, the people who are going to deliver it and execute the plan, their understanding of what's been agreed is different. It seems to be watered down, or actually there's a lack of communication in total that what we're trying to do as a firm. So again, we see that this is basically the comms aren't cascaded down in an efficient way, and that leads to a misunderstanding of what the plan's trying to do, misalignment within the firm, and ultimately stagnation of your plan. So another area to be considered for your firm is the agreement level and how you've cascaded that agreement level to the rest of the firm. Accountability is another area as well. So the reason we got involved with helping firms planning was because back in May 2015, when we sort of got involved with the add-on world with firms and helping them with their clients, how to pick the right add-ons and all those type of things. At that point, we took a snapshot of most of those firms, saying, right, how many clients have you got? How many clients do you want to go to cloud? How many do you think you'll be moving in the next 12, 24 months? So we took that snapshot in May 2015. We went and visited them between 12 and 18 months later. And one of the problems we were seeing was that actually they said they might want to do 100 in that year. They'd done 13. Those are some of the sort of types of number. It always seems about 10% of what they wanted to do. And we saw this as a big problem. When we sort of delved more and just asked some questions around what's happening, what was the plan, we were finding that we were seeing the new role of the cloud champion or the cloud accountability manager, whatever, the cloud project manager, that role had been given to somebody who was normally of quite a good technical level, and also someone who would be happy to keep researching and going to unknown areas on behalf of the firm. But that person or persons, normally one person, would also be accountable for the actual project delivery, so needed to know where the project was, all of the associated problems, and then we actually find they're also fee earning on what they used to do prior to being the cloud champion. So it was a really, really hard and tough gig for those people in those positions. We are starting to see a bit more of the move towards the cloud champion being made, given the time, not necessarily fee earning or a much reduced percentage of fee earning to their time. But what I would say to that is we are seeing a bit of issue with roles and responsibilities, what a cloud champion should be, and somebody who's going to make sure the project's delivered. They're normally not the same mindset or skill set, but I'll go into that further down the line. So accountability, lack of traction, and it's normally due to people just don't have the time or don't have the framework in to ensure that things are moving. Another one, the starting point is not understood. So the majority of firms, and this is upwards of 90%, do not know enough about their client base. They know it to a level, but the level's not the adequate level in order for you to start a conversion plan in the proper manner. So what I mean by this is we struggle to find out how many clients people have exactly got or firms have exactly got. We also struggle to find what sectors they're in, what current software they're in, what entity split was within the firm, what percentage are deemed fit for cloud. That starting point, although it's a big piece of work, actually is pivotal alongside the vision in order to make sure this is actually going to progress and hit some momentum. Because if you don't know what you're starting with and you don't know your current numbers in terms of what you've converted and the total sectors, but you don't also know what you're looking to convert, this is a massive, just a huge overwhelm for most firms. They don't know where to start. They can't look and see what the method of targeting and moving clients across. And what I attribute this to actually is normally there's been poor data management within firms, and I would say that's across the profession, and this is seen as a massive undertaking now to get that back in place. One firm I work with, just to show this can be done, they cleansed 11,000 clients with the type of information I'm talking about, the type of current softwares they're on or current systems, the sectors, the types of fees, those sort of things. They did 11,000 clients in 11 weeks. And to be fair to them, that was because it was seen as such a priority from the top down. So if anybody else says to me, oh, we'll never get that done, I've seen 11,000 done in 11 weeks, 1,000 a week. That was a big firm, but if you just think that all it was is that they still don't have that many people, they just made it a concentrated effort in a project in its own right. They now have visibility of what they're going to be looking to do and who they're going to be looking to do it with, and at the moment most firms don't have that visibility. Next one we've got processes. So this is also overlooked as well. So we're going to look at a new cloud accounting platform, and we want to start moving sister companies into this type of working in terms of our client base. But internally, that change of process isn't managed. So if you're one of those firms that has got lots of outsourcing, so you take the bag and box, we're seeing quite a lot of firms who aren't really, that's not really working, that move. And the reason being is when we go and see those people who are actually doing the processing, they're hitting problems with the new tech, the new process, the different ways of working, the different outputs they used to have from what they used to have. And because no one is actually managing that change with them to help them along, it's becoming a bit of an issue really in terms of what they can manage, how they can actually run that process and how they can progress that that process. And the reason that things go back to default or we stagnate is because people aren't being supported. They don't know whether it's a training problem, a software problem, the wrong client's been put forward. Ultimately, if they've got no one to report that to who's going to help them fix that issue, it will then mean that they're going to revert to type. And when you go back 3 months later to see how the project's gone, oh, we couldn't move that client because of X, Y, and Z. And actually, it could just be down to the fact that it was a slight training issue, or we've just picked the wrong client, but they haven't done anything in that time because it hasn't moved as they wanted to see fit. And I think when people are going through change, there are problems in generally that people maybe don't want to go through that change, and they have to be shown that actually these isn't problems, this is just the transition. So we also have to consider that as well. So processes not being managed, not identified firstly, and then not managed through the change after is another problem we have. Okay. Which does tie into actually no plans. So when I say what's the plan for hitting these 200 over the next 18 months, I normally get either sent a page of A4 with we're going to do 200 in the next year, and these are the people who'll be involved. There's an actually low-level plan of who those people might be, how we're going to nurture them through, what's our staff base look like in terms of being able to deliver this type of service and new ways of working. So there's a lot of moving parts within the firm. You're currently trying to manage what you currently do, and you're currently also trying to transition to a new way of working. That has to be planned. If there is no plan in place and it's all done by corridor conversations, or what I frequently see is I go to planning meetings and they are talking shops, not delivery shops. People talk, but no one takes any actions, and no one's reviewing what we should have done, what we have done, and how we gain traction on what we need to do and other problems. So again, because we're not seeing any low-level plans for conversion, it's very difficult for anyone to monitor what they should or shouldn't be doing. Again, we'll look into this in a bit more detail. Again, the change management framework. So this is alludes back to sort of the process area as well. So a couple of firms I've been to see, they've got sort of change boards or cloud conversion project boards or something like that, and they meet quarterly. The problem you've got with that type of setup is if you're only going to meet 4 times a year, and we go back to that outsourced sort of processing where we've got new ways of working, if that team hit issue in week 1 of the first quarter, you've actually lost the next 11 weeks, and it's taken you 11 weeks to find out there's a problem that you can't continue with. And we see this frequently. Went to see a firm in the UK about a year ago, and the partner tells me they're a big zero practice and they're big on receipt bank, and this is with all his team. And then one of his team members says, actually, we've not used receipt bank for nearly 7-8 months. We had a problem with it and we stopped using it. So obviously they weren't even meeting quarterly. Big surprise to the partner. And when we dug into what the actual problem was, it was just an education problem. It wasn't even actually an issue. It was just how it was set up and configured, and they just needed a bit more hand-holding. Now, if that was a frequent way of getting some feedback from your staff as to what's happening, then you could fix that early and keep them on the track of momentum and progression. Now, as I said earlier, people are looking for a way out, but ultimately they're actually looking for support. If they're not supported, then they look for a way out. So if you're going to put some sort of change management framework in, I say a cloud conversion team should be meeting monthly at worst, if not twice a month. And at the time when it's going to be big moves, let's say you're in a pilot position of moving 100 clients over the next 3 months across, you should probably meet weekly to make sure that those people feel firstly supported. Any problems they've got are taken away from them, and you can take to a resolution either with the vendor or with some extra training, or maybe just select their own person for this type of process move. So the change management framework is absolutely key. And as I say about talking shops, every meeting should have some structure and there should be some output to it, but I will run through those again a bit later. And then finally we have ecosystem trepidation. I mean, essentially this also goes back to the areas of not knowing your client base and not having a plan of attack to how to hit these types of clients. So at the moment, we'll have firms ring us and say, we haven't really got a plan, we're just doing this sort of organically, and we're just going to hit certain businesses as and when they need cloud, when we've gotten a conversation with them. So what starts to happen is we start to get some momentum, and this quickly moves to stagnation, because they identify the 200 clients, they start talking to them. There's been no real understanding of maybe they're an office base or they're a certain partner's client base they're going for. And that particular cloud manager or the client manager, whoever it might be, starts ringing us on a weekly basis and will say, right, I've got a client, they sell widgets online, they need inventory and they need a new e-commerce, and I want to link them to Xero. Okay, there's a project in its own right. That client manager or that client-facing person has probably been in quite a difficult situation because they don't really know how to manage that conversation. They're starting to talk about things they don't know about. Now, at that point, that same client manager goes and sees the next person on the conversion, and it's a small cafe and need a till system. Okay, so that's 2 in 2 weeks, 2 different types of systems they need to look at. One sec. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm just getting a note saying, I think we might be okay. Yeah, can hear you. Right, that's great, thank you. Okay. Just get back into my thread. So yes, so they've had 2 calls, 2 weeks, different type. 3rd week comes along, it's a manufacturing business, they need something else. What's happening at that point is essentially that person starts to get app overwhelmed. They're going into areas of unknown. They're starting to feel that they're being a bit vulnerable in these conversations, and they stop asking the questions because they don't have the support. Now, if you looked at your client base and you knew that you had, I don't know, 40 manufacturers, it would be well within your interest to go and learn about manufacturing in the cloud with cloud systems. That makes perfect sense. That cafe that we've seen as a second appointment, if we've only got 1 or 2 cafes on our radar, that person is going to, that client manager is probably going to try and learn about that particular system for that particular client. But actually the long-term benefits, unless you're going and prospect into cafes and retail, make no sense at all. But this is all because we don't really know what's coming over the hill. We don't know that the new client base, the client base that we're currently looking at is really heavy in manufacturing, so we need to learn about that. And anything cafe and other things based is so small within our grand scale of clients that we don't really need to worry about learning about that, and we can put them on the back burner for a later point of conversion. Or we just go and speak to a vendor, or we go and speak to a cloud integrator to help us with that. So again, that ecosystem trepidation, I feel quite sorry for these client managers. We have staff who know we've got 5 or 6 staff who know different areas, and I'm seeing these cloud people and client managers trying to learn all of it. You're essentially going to become a jack of all trades and a master of none, and at the same time you're also going to make mistakes, which again you're going to lose the momentum, because I've tried this, I made a mistake, I don't like being in this position. So you've either got to go and get support in that area, or you've got to invest some time to learn and educate yourselves in that area. But if you don't know what areas you need to educate in, you're always going to be reactive, which does bring the problem on then of how do I keep this momentum going, because your staff won't be engaged. Okay. So the progress within your firm, are you more than happy, ticking along nicely, or could do better? I'm just going to pop a quick poll out. So I'm going to launch that and you should see it now. So I'll just give it let's give it 20 seconds. Be interested to see what the numbers are. Okay. Cool. Just leave it 2 more seconds anymore. Okay. I'll close that poll and I will share. So can you see that there now on the polls? So we've got 50% could do better, 43% ticking along nicely. So half of us think we've got some work to do there. Okay, interesting, cool. back onto it. So firm levels on the cloud journey. This is some of what we've picked up as well along the way. So we, as I mentioned, May 2015 was a big area for us. What we started to do is really try and give our own range of where we're seeing people and where they are currently, where they want to go, and then some of the firms who are more mature across the piece. So you've got level 0, dinosaurs, not really considering cloud systems at all. So we saw recent ZeroCon, they were saying Pacioli would still get a job in 20% of the firms across the UK. So that's not great, and I think there's about 4,500 firms, which equates to 20%. So you know, that's there's 20% of those still knocking around, which means there's going to be clients up for grabs. Level 1, we see there's a will to use cloud systems, so there might be there's a bit of organic movement into it, not really a commitment, but they definitely sort of cater for it, but it's not seen as a major project. We've seen a level 2, which is a partial horizontal platform in place but no traction. Now, talking about partial horizontals and horizontal in general, a horizontal in our cloud accounting world is simply a cloud accounting vendor. So you're looking at Xero, QBO, Sage, whatever your cloud accounting vendor of choice is in the middle there. You're then looking at invoice automation, so that's going to be your receipt bank, auto entry, data Molino, systems that start to move in there. Maybe debt collection chasing, things like Chaser, Satago, and advanced reporting if you need it. So advanced reporting could be within your vendor actually, or you could look at the Futureleys or the Spotlights, Fathoms, Floats, the rest of it, Float more so for cash flow really. But that's what we call the horizontal. So these are what bring your platform to life to deliver. So it's the horizontal that you'll build on top of. So majority of time we see firms with a Xero or a QBO with an auto entry data Molino or receipt bank, and that's a partial horizontal. And we'll go into this a bit later, but we do start to see then there's a miscorrelation between how many cloud accounting packages there are against how many invoice automation tools there are, and we'll run into that slightly later. But a horizontal, so we see this is where we're talking about firms who've basically chosen Xero or QBO or something like that, and have then got a smaller amount of receipt banks, data Molinos, auto entries, those type of things. So the level 3 is where we're seeing the horizontal in place and the onboarding conversion workflow executing. So what I mean by that is they've got very strong correlation between their invoice automation and their cloud accounting. So it could be really strong on Xero and Receipt Bank, for example. Both move, they've got those very closely aligned, and the majority of clients get that as standard. And they may have started now to look at advanced reporting either within the cloud accounting vendor itself, or they've started to use it Futurely, Spotlight, Fathom, those types of things. The other thing they've also got is they're starting to hit momentum on their onboarding or conversion. So they're either onboarding new clients to this, or they're converting existing clients, and they've nailed that workflow. So for us, level 3 is a really important point. It becomes a tipping point of execution and scale and quicker progression, because all of the moving parts which have been difficult to pull together, that means you're in place. So that level 3 is an important area. Level 4 is when we start to work into verticals. What we would consider a vertical is going to be a sector, a type of sector that you're working with. So it might be you've got 2 or 3 add-ons that work within the construction space or the manufacturing space. This will be deemed based on what your client base is and where your good fees are, and you think that's an area that you want to pursue in terms of converting, or it's going to be a new area where you think there's a lot of opportunity that you could convert new clients with what you're offering. And really interesting around verticals. This world is so new. Once you've delivered 3 or 4 projects in one vertical, because this is such a small or such an immature part of the process now, what we're starting to find is that you can almost class yourself as an expert at that point, because there's so few people doing it and then so few people got the volume. So once you've done 5 or 6 implementations of a similar type of system in a similar sector, there's no problem that you can't actually say that I'm now an expert in that area. So again, that level is level 4, and that's where you're starting to really start to work in certain sectors. Doesn't mean you're not working in others, but it's a case of you are majoring in one. Maybe that's marketing or terms of talking about bringing clients on. So multi on level 5 is when we've really gone to town there, and we've got more than one sector and we've really nailed that. and also talking about regular advisory sessions. Maybe you're feeding back on cash flow projects, or it could be management accounts quarterly, and you're using the real-time data to deliver those in a standard format rather than quite manual to put those together. And then level 6 is essentially at that point where you're mastering the whole world, and just bringing on sector after sector. So at the moment in this world, level 3 is really important because that's the scale point. So we've got MTD. We know there's an April 19 delivery, and we'll see what the actual consultation documents deliver. But we know that MTD is going to be in the next sort of 3 to 4 years in some frame. So again, you'd be looking to scale. You need to be in a level 3 perspective there. Most firms are in around level 1 and 2, and I would say that's around 70 to 75% are sort of in that world. A lot of will, a lot of want. We're not seeing that much execution. So the current scenario for your firm that you need to think about, some of the areas are: what's your client segmentation? Have you done that? Have you reviewed that? Do you know your splits? That will give you a forward plan of what needs to be achieved. And actually, if you start to think about client segmentation, understand the year end, you can actually start to drive out some actual delivery periods that we would like to target this client at this time, because that's their year end. So 6 months before we want to talk about moving, 3 months before we want to form a plan, and then year end they're in the mode, because it's all about nurturing the client. So client segmentation, really key point. You need to think about, have you done that? Staff training, really interesting area, staff training. So I see lots of blanket training, and it's a really peculiar method for me. So obviously everybody wants to get all their staff vendor certified and keep their professional qualifications, and I get all that, and that makes perfect sense. But what I don't think is really being honed into at the moment is actually when we look at the staff base. So 2 areas to look at: client base and staff base. When you look at the staff base, I see people learning like how to demo a Zero, for example. I know that's one of the certifications that are out there, or one of the modules. But when I speak to the firm and say, okay, so you've got these 10 staff to train, how many can actually demo? How many would you actually be confident in putting them in front of a client, and how many is it sort of their natural way of working with a client, and they're good at that? So they've got personable, and they're very good at relationships, and they will manage that type of engagement very well. We actually see that out of those 10, it's like normally about 20%, but we try and teach everybody how to demo Zero, where in fact we've got no confidence. I mean, they're just the wrong person, don't have that skill set or that mindset to go and do that. And it's the same with the processing. It could be people who are really good at the front end in terms of engaging, using the cloud system, and really sort of happy to learn more and put themselves in a situation of not knowing everything but learning more. And they're being asked to look at the processing side. So you've also got to start looking at now your staff base in terms of what are their skills and their actual standard soft skills, not their skills in terms of what can they learn and what can they pass, but what are they going to offer to your way of working, and where are they strong? And to be honest, where people are strongest are often where they're happiest. So you need to consider that area there about staff training. It's not all about the vendor quals, the professional quals. It's also about, is there anything we can do to nurture these people who might be really good at client facing in this world, because we're going to need, if we've got lots of clients to convert, we're going to need lots of people to be able to demo. On the flip side, these people are really good at understanding how we can automate the process workflow in the back end. Right, can we measure them in that world? So again, staff training needs to be considered a lot more than just staff professional quals and vendor certs. The workflow re-engineering. So if you've already gone through this, have you actually looked at that workflow, re-engineered it, assigned somebody and managed that workflow through to the new ways of working? Again, thinking about the problems people are going to have. Those processes, if they hit problems, they're going to revert to type. If they revert to type, you've lost an opportunity to convert another client or another set of clients. So the workflow re-engineering, that's something that needs to be looked at. Which workflows are going to be affected, and when am I planning to do that, and who's going to be in charge and who's going to support? So again, workflow re-engineering needs to be considered. Marketing. So marketing is a tough job in this world at the moment, I think, because I'm seeing lots of generic. When I'm on lots of practices newsletters and their type of marketing, and it's so generic. And actually, a lot of the stuff that's done is like the features are what is talked about. So you know, you can have bank feeds, you can have this, that, and the other, whatever it might be. Find and recode. So one of the firms said to me about find and recode, which is of no use to me as a business owner. Now, what we're looking at with the marketing is actually, once you know your client segmentation, you've got an idea of when they're likely to move. Your marketing can help you nurture people across. If you knew their sectors, you could invite them to a sector-based event, whether that be online or held at your premises or another type of event area. So essentially, the marketing at the moment, we're seeing very broad brush because we don't know really who we're targeting. If we knew our client base, we could send slightly different marketing. So if I said to you, professional services is huge. If you did cloud accounting for architects, cloud accounting for business consultants, cloud accounting for software designers, at that point there, that may be actually the very same delivery, the very same content, just with some words changed, because ultimately what you're going to deliver is the same, but it feels very personal and relevant to the people you're actually targeting. Whereas at the moment we're talking cloud accounting in general, it's online, it's real time, we'll link your bank. Well, that's all good for everybody, but you really need to niche that down. And if you're talking about sectors as well, you actually start to learn the lingo as well. So marketing is a requirement, but I think at the moment it's so generic and so broad brush that it's very hard to really pinpoint who's going to get what message. So the competition opportunity, I mean, this is an area as well, because we're now seeing, obviously we have like the KPMGs, the big top four who are doing telecanvassing around certain areas, and they're opening the mind of people. And I've had some firms where they haven't told their clients that they offer any sort of cloud accounting, and then someone like KPMG's done a telecanvassing, and then they've had to reduce their fees because KPMG have offered a price. If they'd actually just told their client that we do offer cloud accounting in the first place, they wouldn't have had that sticky feeling, and also then had to reduce their fees. And obviously that's an area where you don't want to get into, because it's sort of a bitter conversation, not a good conversation. So that's the competition and opportunity area. And the opportunity is, we just talked about at the start about Pacioli and he getting 20% of firms. Well, if that's 4,500 firms, all of their client base will be looking for somewhere over the next 3-4 years. So the competition opportunity actually is a lot of those firms who aren't actually moving, and then a lot of those firms who are level one that we talked about, they are at the low end, and they're not really moving, and they're not really offering their clients too much there. So again, the competition opportunity is, I actually think the competition is actually yourselves. If you are got a lot of converted clients to convert and you're not doing it, you're actually competing with yourself first and foremost, because you need to get to a point where you're at level 3, where you've got really good onboarding processes, and then you can go and actually scale with new clients. Staff turnover. So my anticipation is that I see with this change that staff won't come with you. Not all staff. They're just not going to feel it, not going to get it, going to want it. Change is difficult, and some people just don't want the change, and are very, very averse to change. So I have yet to work with a firm who hasn't lost some sort of staff, or certainly had staff move off to an area where it doesn't include this type of work. So be prepared for that, I think, as well. And it also means the same for client turnover, because ultimately, if you've got clients who are cost-only clients, and what I mean by that is they're just there for the process, they don't want anything else, will never want anything else. To be honest, with the advent of automation, they're going to get it cheaper somewhere else. So you've got to work out, as part of my client segmentation, I'd be looking at at-risk clients who can help you move, who you know are likely to, or as an opportunity, a potential risk that they're going to leave your client base, because they are all about the cost. They've got huge PIA, pay and ask factor, so and your margins are low. You actually need to start looking at those people now and saying actually they're at risk, because they're all about the cost, and there's going to be something which is a lot cheaper than us, but they're never going to buy anything else. But on the flip side, for those clients who don't want anything else and are getting just want a low cost, there's people at the moment paying a low cost or a high cost, not getting any value return from their accountant. So again, you will replace them over time, but you could be wasting time on those clients, and you do need to effectively review who could be at risk. And also, something you need to be tracking is your current number of cloud conversions. So we do need to be looking at what you've currently done. That tells us a lot in terms of data. So ultimately, you do need to be tracking that on a monthly. It's one of the KPIs, and your current number of cloud conversions. KPIs you should be having on a monthly basis are how many existing clients have I converted and how many new clients have I moved to, we brought on that are on the cloud, because that sort of masks, I think, the truth. If you're a conversion firm who's got to convert clients, you need to know how many you've converted as well as how many new ones you've onboarded. Okay. So your example of current targets would be how many in total to move, how many have currently moved to cloud, how long to move current client base, what is the monthly conversion rate, because your conversion run rate is really important. I've got to move, you might be moving 5 or 6, but you actually need to move 10 in terms of hit your target. Those are numbers you can start to monitor progress on. Okay. So if I show you here a example of a calculation, so let's just check that's moved. So you can see that it's slightly small. Anyone wants to see it after they can. But if I give you this here, it'll be, we've got 500 clients to move, this firm has. We've deemed that 400 clients are fit for moving. We've converted 55 clients, and we did 25 of those. We've got 1.3, sorry, 1 second. And we've converted 25, we've got 13.8 years there to fully integrate that. That's the number there. So we've had it up to 73 years, we've had it down to 3 years. So these are the types of numbers that you should be using your current conversion to work out how far you've got to go. And this is actually based on your own data. So this isn't like hunch, it's going to take us a long time. You should be reviewing your own data to work out what you've got left to do. And that's the type of thing on a quarterly basis you should be reviewing to see those years to fully integrate come down. Okay. And then just an idea as well on client segmentation, because I think this is another area which is left. This is the type of client segmentation that we have done. So this is based on, it's anonymized segmented data, but this is a multi-office firm. What we were able to do was get a breakdown of how many clients per office on the second left at the top there. We got a breakdown of entities, we got a breakdown of sectors, we got a breakdown of the accounting systems they were using, so whether it's source data, and we got a breakdown of their year end. So this was the old MTD tranches, but MTD 1, let's say, it started to give us then a flavour for what it was doing. So if I take the MTD off and actually just pick on this area over here, we can look at source data clients, spreadsheet, Sage Desktop, manual cash book, include the blanks, starts to feed us then and gives us breakdown. And we can also see we've got limited companies in there, so we've now got 535 limited companies, and it looks here we've got doctors, building and construction's a big one there, farming, and professional services which need breakdown. So from that now we can see that the types of businesses that we've got, we talked about now understanding where it might be areas to educate ourselves, judging on this, we would definitely want some sort of professional services breakdown. We definitely want some sort of construction event to get a load of all those construction clients at an event, and also doctors, medicals and healthcare. And then at that point, we're starting to be really understanding of what our client base is and who we can help and how we don't help. And here we've got some really tiny ones. Like, what's this one here? So media, we've got 30. We might deem that not worthy of getting involved in at the moment. So again, that's an area of what we talk about in client segmentation. And as well, just to feedback on that, we can actually drill down to exactly who those are. So this isn't just high level numbers. We can actually get client codes for that and then actually highlight those as a tranche for delivery. So again, an area there to think about for yourselves. Client segmentation, okay. So example planning steps. When we're talking about planning a project, so when we used to, so my history is sort of IT, project management, program management, and one of the jobs I used to get was we used to have to refresh systems. So what that would mean is, let's say Outlook. You had Outlook 2003, and we had to upgrade to Outlook 2010, let's say. We get given a list of all of the affected, so this would be our client base, all of the affected desktops that need to be refreshed. Okay, so at that point I've got 1,000 desktops to refresh. I then had to go and audit and get what systems they had as well, which may interfere once I do the upgrade, so I could see what the impact was and who would be impacted. So that's very much the same as doing your client base. And then we would do a rollout plan, which is identifying every single desktop and who the user of that desktop was. And then we'd also identify areas of where they're very similar, so we can roll out lots of them at the same time because the impact would be less. So I attribute all of this to that type of world because I see it as very much a refresh that you have to consider. But so all of this is based on what I would do and how I would manage it. So we would look at defining the project first. So before we start the project, we have to define and design a project. So we're looking at high-level solution confirmation. So this is what solution are we going to use? Talk about horizontal. What's going to be our cloud accounting system, and what's going to be the invoice automation? Okay. Who's our project team at this point? So is it, who's the stakeholder, who's the partner, who's going to sponsor it, who's the cloud champion, who's the project manager? Very high level at that point, but that's who we would look at. High level workflow plan, so which workflows do we know are impacted from the off? So we know our outsourcing team are going to be affected, and we might know that anyone who deals with construction is going to be affected because that's one of the early areas. So again, a couple of ideas of the workflows that would be affected. How are we going to internally communicate? How are we going to train? When are we looking to train? What's our high-level client conversion schedule? And what's our marketing strategy? So again, those are the areas there of defining. We then go into designing, so we start to do the client segmentation, and then we go into low-level delivery of roles and responsibilities, the low-level workflow plan, so what dates will that be affected, who's going to manage it, the criteria for cloud accounting. So if you are a firm who offers multi-vendor, so you want to be one of those firms who don't want to just sit with one cloud accounting, so you might have Xero, QBO, Cashflow, Sage, whatever else is on the horizon. If you don't have clear criteria for why your processing team or your managers choose which cloud accounting platform, you will have a mishmash and have no chance of scaling, because some people might prefer the green of QBO, some people might prefer the blue of Xero. If you don't define which jobs come in and use which criteria, whether it be receipt bank or an auto entry if you're using dual in that area as well, you will have no hope of scaling because you're leaving it down to the individual's choice as to what they want to choose. So your criteria for cloud accounting is very, very important if you are doing multi-vendor. Okay, we're then going to low-level internal comms rollout plan, low-level training plan, the low-level client conversion schedule where we've tried to start to identify people, and then we've got a marketing plan. So from the strategy, we're going to go into the planning. So it's all about high level what we're going to do. So this define here on the left, we would consider that to be more of a vision document at that point, and I'll show you an example of an overview document. The design is where we actually put some people and some time frames to what we're looking to do, and then at that point we're going to go into delivery. So we're going to start converting. We're going to start the regular review meeting so that things can't stagnate. We're going to do governance and quality checking. So we've seen firms where they've gone onto a pilot project, done some recovery reviews and things like that, and found out they haven't got any joy out of the move. And when we've gone and looked at what they've done, they haven't put bank feeds in, they're not using the invoice automation opportunities, not using bank rules, not using any of the efficiencies which would help, and obviously it's deemed that it's a failure. And that's so you do need to, when you're rolling this out, if you're multi-office or multi-department, multi-team, you do need to have some governance in there. The workflow implementation starts to begin, so how is that going to be managed? Our training plans begin. We may have done a little bit before this, hopefully, and the marketing plan starts to roll out. Because we know our client base, we know who we're looking to go and work with, the marketing now starts to get really relevant to the right type of client base that we've got, or prospect base if it's not a client base you've got, but it's a new prospect area you want to work to. So again, those areas are really important. So that's an idea of how you might look to build that together. And I would say normally define is about 1 month to 6 weeks. You're looking at the design to be again about the same, maybe near 8 weeks, between 4 and 8 weeks, and then deliver, you're really looking at about week 9 to week 12 onwards. You start to really then motor. So whether that's a defined piece of scope work to get some clients on and really nail the process and then roll it out to the bigger audience, or whether just people just go onto that of, I'm just going to roll this out. Okay. So there's an example of a planning step. I'll show you a bit more detail, but this is a type of overview of the Gantt chart of what we spoke about in the define. When are we going to do that? Who's going to do it? How long is it going to take? And this is how we start to then monitor in our review meetings how things are going, where people are slipping, people got too much work on, not going to deliver what they need to for the project to be successful. Because I think one of the main things I've found is that people's perception of what project management is. So planning is a big part of it, and planning is key, and you should always have a plan to start with. But actually, the real key to project management is managing the change to the plan. The minute you make that plan, it will be out of date for some reason, whether it's within your own control or external to your own control. And managing the plan and the changes to it are actually the key, and the communications of the changes to the plan are actually the key point around project management. And I see too many people get a plan together and then they don't manage it, so spend all the hard work getting the plan, but actually can't get it, can't then execute because they don't manage it or communicate around it properly. Okay. Let's just move this down. Okay. So, example outputs. I'm going to show you a few. So we talked about the define area. Can you see that there? Let me just shift this across. Sorry, 1 second, guys. I'm just going to zoom this in. Hopefully you can see that a bit better. So when I talk about strategizing and you know, we sit on this massive document for weeks and years, we pull together, as part of our planning groups that we do, we pull together an idea of what something may look like, a template, cloud accounting project overview document. So here we've got the contents, and it will align very much to what we had in the define area. So mission statement, vision, very high level, depends whether you're looking to improve capacity within the firm or grow the client base. There's a slightly different way there. And again, it's just a vision statement, and it just gives everybody an idea, because this is something that's going to be seen by most of your staff, okay? If not all, in fact. We then start to talk about a high level solution. So here you'll see here, I've picked the receipt bank and Xero. So here's an idea of the overview: receipt bank, Xero into Futurely. Internally, we're going to use auto entry in Xero. You can bring QBO if you're multi-vendor. We give it a little bit of an overview on what we're looking to use there, and that, for the start, it just gives us a view of what we're looking to use and how that's going to be. Okay, we can build more off this in the design phase. We're then looking at key delivery stakeholders. So at this level, we're not really going into the low-level elements of who's going to be doing what, but who's a project sponsor, who's a project manager, and who's a cloud champion. Now, this here is the client conversion targets, and this is what I was talking about, actually knowing where you are currently. 1 second, guys, sorry, it's just flipped too high. Okay, client conversion targets. So here now, what we're looking at, this is a larger firm. These are anonymized. I've sort of just taken some averages from bigger firms. But the firm has probably 3,200 clients within the portfolio, and it's perceived that 60% of those will be fit for cloud. So we took that firm through the calculator, okay? So at the moment, they had 3,200, 60% fit for cloud, 180 were on cloud, and they've done 80 in the last 12 months. And there was an invoice automation ratio of 15%, and I'll come back to that shortly. But what it gave us was, based on current firm performance, it will take 23 years to complete the cloud transition. the firm had said to me, I want to do this by April 19, and I don't see why we can't. Of course, when I fed back to the partner that actually you'd need to be 15 times more performant to do that, because they do an average of 6 to 8 a month, and then they need 91 conversions a month. Now these numbers may seem extreme, but actually these are actual in terms of numbers, likely numbers that we've seen. So again, now that that partner would know exactly where they stand, or that team, that cloud team, they've actually got something to better. If you don't know that, it's very hard for you to show improvement, and this is based on real data of what you've currently got. Now, the other interesting aspect that we see is this invoice automation ratio. So this is for every 100 businesses you have on cloud accounting, so whether that's QBO or Xero, how many of those 100 do you have using invoice automation? So at the moment, that firm, for every 100, they only had 15 on some sort of invoice automation. Now, what's more worrying about this is most firms actually start with the internal jobs first, so the client has got no engagement and wouldn't really need to know what systems are being used. What we're starting to see there is they're not actually using the invoice automation tools at all, so they're still keying in the data. We'd expect that to be around 80% for the outsourced jobs. We'd expect auto entry, receipt bank, whichever one you use, data Molino, to be a lot higher and be used a lot more. So if your invoice automation ratio is low, you actually know that your internal efficiencies aren't being realized at all. So this is a really good area. So this is the type of thing that we'd be looking to say, until you know this, you really don't know what progress is. And I think one of the other areas we're seeing is people sign up a platinum deal with one of the vendors, you know, it might be 100, 500, whatever the deal is, and they think that's a really good accolade, but it depends what percentage of your whole client base that is. So you do need to look at your client base, you need to understand your current numbers, understand your invoice automation ratio, because that's a really good key indicator as to whether you're really adopting the tools internally or not. So for example, out of the top 100 firms, we work with quite a few of them, or I've worked with them in the past, and actually some of the larger sort of mid-tier firms, us as a business, Bluehub, have more receipt bank clients than they do, and we don't have any clients to convert. All our clients are brand new clients. We're not looking at an existing client base we have, and that means that the benefits of that aren't being sold properly, or actually there's just a lack of understanding of how they should be offered. So that's an area you need to consider as well. So back into the doc, high-level training approach. So a bit of blurb there about what we're looking to do, but then what are our primary training considerations? Vendor certs, conversion management, how to demo the solution, client-facing, train the trainer options. Again, we're going into low-level detail. We actually get into the planning, but as a document that we can get out and get easily read and easily reviewed and commented, this is going to be level enough for us at the moment. Then we look at the high-level workflow approach. So we do know at the moment, based on what we're looking to do and the types of systems we've selected for our solution, that we're going to have onboarding of new clients, internal, external. We need to consider that. Conversion of existing clients, internal and external clients. Again, that's going to be a case of how do we do that? How are we going to train clients with the cloud? What's our ongoing system support going to be? So again, we're going to go through a low-level plan, but we know from just initial conversations and where the project is, that those are 4 primary areas that we're going to need to consider as either new workflows or refined workflows. So your internal comms strategy, again, you can see it's not massive detail. It's just a case of, so where are we going to talk to our internal comms? So I'm going to talk to our staff about this. So it could be got an internal portal or an internal website or internal newsletter. We could do regular updates via that. I've seen some firms do team roadshows. Also, group discussion areas are quite key. So whether it's internal forums or Slack channels. And then again, you've got the frequent team comms. So if you're Office 365 or you know, Slack or anything like that, or Yammer or Facebook for Work, again, it's creating that type of frequent team comms where things can come back and forth, and it just engages people. And if it's quicker, if it is actually used and quickly responded to, people start to use that as a way of communicating issues and issue resolutions. So again, an area there to think about. And then we go into marketing strategy. So how are we going to start talking to our clients, and how are we going to start talking about conversion? So website needs to be refreshed, newsletters, email marketing. Are we going to do local events, FSB or local country shows if you've got agriculture? Regional events, are there any regional type of events we want to go? National events, online webinars, seminars, sector-specific plans based on client segmentation. Again, what you're going to be looking for, if you do have a lot of clients to convert, you need to look at as many opportunities as a one-to-many scenario. You don't want to do one-to-one. If you've got 200 clients and they're going to take 2 or 3 hours each, that's 400 to 600 hours. If you can get those into 10 groups of 20, it's probably going to take you sort of 20 hours. So you need to look at economies of scale of how you're going to be helping people, but it is aligned really to your client segmentation. Okay, so that's an overview of the cloud project overview document, the type of visionary document. Okay. Client segmentation criteria, so just give you an idea on this. So you need to be coming up with a list of the data seg, types of things you should be considering. So we've got client name, entity, year-end, business turnover, other income. You might need that for future MTD if it ever comes back in, whether you want to know about property turnover. The sector industry, how do they currently account for, using what methods they use, which office if you're a multi-office, which client manager and which partner. That's always useful information. Other areas you could be considering are which services they bought, how often do we speak to them, what's their PIA factor. So PIA factor is pain ask factor, and what you're looking there is it's a way of you scoring whether that client is worth going for or not, or worth working with longer term. So if it's a PIA factor of 1, it's painful, and actually they're at risk of being a cost-based client anyway. Again, so you can have a 1 to 5 sort of the value offering for them longer term. If they are 1 in both of those, it's probably likely that you're not that bothered about keeping them. So again, you need to be considerate of thinking about the PIA to move in, because you really want clients who will get the clients who are going to value this and will look to do this. If they're not going to value it and it's going to be painful, then leave them to the bottom or leave them to the competition, as I would say. Okay, and the difficulty to change, so it might be actually because their systems are very bespoke, or there's real processes which aren't quite captured yet in the cloud space, then it might be that they have difficulty to change. And again, it would be a scoring method saying that's difficulty to change. We're not going to move those. We are aware of them, but it needs to be a bit more of a focus project to consider. So again, some data seg criteria, your staff skills matrix. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I'm going to whiz through this, but the types of things you might start to cover are personal presentation, how they plan their day, what do they know about the company and how we're trying to work, and are they interested in the budgets and recoveries, what they like at communicating with clients internally, understanding of what their team is good and not so good at, do they know what their strengths are they happy to resolve their weaknesses, are they upfront on the sales, can they upsell with clients, can they demonstrate the software, and you just start to give numbers there of what it be. So 1 to 5, and you can start to see, because you've got multi-team members, you can start to see which areas your team is deficient in. So here, look, sales looks really poor in this team, but you've got one person who might get a chance of gaining new sales, but that might not be what we need that team to do. We've got technical skills like the vendor cert type stuff. So again, that's an area that you need to build up and think about, what does that look like and how does that, because this is again another area we need to review probably on a quarterly basis. Okay, staff skills matrix, the project management template. So again, I did speak about this, but let's go back. So again, this is a type of system we would use. Reich, anyone's been on the planning groups with us, that's the type of thing you see. You can drill down into different areas. I won't, because it goes into all sorts of detail. But if I go on to a timeline view here, you can also see we've got sort of the Gantt chart view there, and we can start to open up design, which is all the elements we had, what dates it would be, who would be assigned to that, the definition of the project. So again, a good planning tool will help. This hasn't got to be this one, but it could be something like that. Yeah, including the framework of change, so we want all the change meetings included in there. We've got a roles and responsibilities template, which I think is really important. It is one that's missed quite regularly. So again, we're looking here, types of roles, what they do, who they're involved with. Again, something we go through on the planning group in a bit more detail. Okay, and we have project minutes template. So minutes are the bane of everyone's life, and actually we talk about having action minutes more so, and I actually like to try and, I've done this to show you there are templates that should be followed to stop them being talking shops. So there should be a good agenda, and we should be looking at the plan that we have in place. That should be the key driver, but then sort of we can capture minutes if you so wish, and then any tasks. But what I would be looking to do, if I was a firm, I would be looking to do action only, and I'd have the actions on a system, so the actions are took whilst the meeting's going on, rather than we just produce the minutes the day before the next meeting. And the other side is, if you want to keep the detail and not necessarily minute it, record your meetings. Again, that's an area which we think is it's very traditional in firms, where we see all these huge minutes being written and they come out the day before, everyone forgets their actions, thinks, oh god, I've got to do my minutes and got to do my actions, and I've only just seen them. So again, it's just a lack of efficiency there. So you should be looking at how you can really make that as an efficient meeting as possible. Do them online, record them, and then have a system where you can capture your actions, much like Reich. You can do that in there, capture the actions, associate them to the person, and give them a deadline as to when completed. People walk out of that meeting with an understanding of what they've got to do, by when, and they know that in the next meeting they'll be pulled up as to where they are on that and any progress issues. Okay, that's a few of the types of template. So how can we help here? We have a 5-step webinar program which covers a lot of this area. We look for a maximum focus group of 8, so we're going to be working together, so it creates a bit of collaboration. We see a lot of firms where the people doing this role, or peoples, is 1 or 2, very much a lonely role, and we're trying to bring a collaborative group together. 5 sessions covering the main steps, and we build the plan. So it's online delivery, live delivery, much like this, but then what we are looking to do is give you some homework, and we have some follow-ups, and then we come back to the group. And it just keeps, 1, the accountability, and 2, we start to solve problems as groups, and you can hear what's working for other firms, where you may have failed, but also where you may find progress that other firms may not. So that's why the whole point of the webinar program. We're running the next group in November, and it runs till mid-January. It's normally priced at $459, but we are putting a 25% offer on until the 1st of November. We do have a 1-day intensive of the program available for people who want to. We run that at a hotel, Bristol, Manchester, and London, and we run those sort of periodically, quarterly more so. And again, to get 5, 6, but we run through that. It's a pretty intensive day of running through all the areas that we spoke about. But you're coming out with a plan essentially, and those templates, and understanding where your business is, your firm is today. And we also have a free Facebook group, and you'll get an email to all of these after. So that's just a highlight of how we help, and I personally run these planning sessions. Again, I'll send something out after this. So tips and takeaways to complete. You need to understand where you are today. That is vitally important. If you don't know where you are today, that's going to be really difficult for you to understand if you're progressing. You should be reviewing your monthly progress against targets. You should instigate those month-1 deliverables, those define pieces. That's the area you need to look at. So getting that document together, getting an overview of where you are, getting that agreed, and then you've all got a high-level terms of reference for the project. Vision and data segmentation are on the project critical path. If you don't nail those 2, it's going to be a difficult and bumpy road ahead. Your choice of PM is vital. So again, we spoke about the cloud manager and the project manager, not necessarily the same people. Could be, but you're going to be very lucky to get both who are skilled in both areas. So if you think about project management discipline, eye for detail, ensuring people are on track and nudging people in the right manner. The cloud element is more about understanding the tech, how you can actually implement the tech, how you can also onboard clients but also onboard staff. So again, slightly different roles there that I think has been missed by a few firms. Implement change frameworks and making sure you're regularly talking to each other and capturing the actions and being efficient as possible in that area to ensure that things move on at the right in the right time frames. There will definitely be bumps in the road on this world, so don't use it as an excuse to stop. You've got to learn to manage them, as I alluded to earlier. This project plan you put in place on day one, that will be a bumpy road, and it'll also be out of date the minute you press save, because things will happen. So managing the change to that plan and communicating the change will be vital. So make sure you keep going and persevering. Got to commit to this. This can't be done as a light touch. I'm just going to sort of do it in my free time, on my lunch hour, or getting out of here and there to do it. It's got to be a concentrated commitment. If it's not, again, it will fail and it'll stagnate. Any of this info is of interest, drop me a line at mattflanagan@bluehub.co.uk. Okay, so any questions? I did have some questions earlier, which I'll just go back to and find. So, I had a question from David. What size would you create this for? If I've got 10 window cleaners, should I take this approach? So again, I presume we're alluding there to about understanding a certain client area, if you've got a bigger area for that. Now, I think the size is probably irrelevant. It's what the fee return is for you. So, the project plan. Yeah, I would plan as much as possible. I mean, maybe not to the nth degree, but I would say that you should be looking to plan those moves. And I think the other thing is to plan is one area that we don't see very well is the marketing. People do the conversion. So let's say you convert 10 window cleaners. There's some really good case studies there because it's very relevant to all the rest of the window cleaners, and also getting some social proof of what those window cleaners have gained from working with you, because then there might only be 500 window cleaners, but you might be really relevant for 250 of them, and you've got a really good process of onboarding and a really good way that you know their terminology. So I would definitely plan that, yeah. Okay, let's just have another flick through here. Okay, so some of the questions here is around the project management tools. Yeah, the project management tools are quite interesting. So the question is, are there a set standard of project management tools? So we use systems like Rike, and there's Teamwork and Teams and Planner you can use if you so wish. I think the main thing you're looking for on a project plan, if you've got multi-people involved, what you would then look at is you would need to see things where you're going to assign people, and you assign them with a time and a date to have something completed by, because that's the accountability piece. So again, what you should be looking at if you're project planning is, okay, can I assign people to it, and can I give them a date by which I want that done? Because that's how you're going to report. And this isn't about being Big Brother and ensuring that sort of slapping people when they haven't done it, but it's understanding why they haven't done it, because it might be that they haven't got the bandwidth, they're the wrong person, or there's a misunderstanding. That means you can manage that problem. If that's not highlighted, that we're not hitting things, then we can't really find out what the problem is or solve it. So again, another area there to consider. Okay, one other question just around the planning group. Okay, so the planning group, yeah, I have got some testimonials, and when I send you the Eventbrite, you'll be able to see those. So there's 4 firms on there who gladly put their name to it. I had great different size firms, a couple of sort of high street to mid-tier, and then we had one of the top 50 on it. So to be honest, it's been well received and well worth attending if you're in this area and pretty fresh to it. We know there's a sort of a lack of support in this area in general. So are there any other questions? Hopefully that's answered those okay. Okay, no worries. Right, well, thanks for your time, and you'll get a follow-up email anyway, and I hope to speak to you all soon. Good luck with your plans.